One. Hi, everybody. This is Josh Jelinski, the financial quarterback. And we're being joined by Anna Byrne, who is the founding partner of Eckert Byrne LLC. With over 25 years' experience, Anna's decision to establish Eckert Byrne stemmed from a desire to create estate plans that encompass more than just a transfer of tangible assets. Her life experience as a young widow revealed a need to pass on wisdom and values to those left behind. I want to ask you about that. So sorry for your loss there. She's committed more than a decade to creating a team that shares that vision. She's joining us today to discuss her new book, The Inheritor's Guide, which provides a detailed roadmap for managing estate, tax, and financial issues, including the loss of one's parents, and shows adult children how to become a steward of their parents' legacy. So, Anna, describe your background for those who haven't heard of you.
So I am a trust and estates attorney. I started off my career as a tax attorney. I worked for the Massachusetts Appeals Appellate Tax Court Division. I worked for the IRS. And then when I realized that government was not the place for me, I became a tax attorney in-house for a wealth management firm around the first .com boom. And I advised on all sorts of tax issues, filed hundreds and hundreds of tax returns for various entities, charitable entities, and I really cut my teeth on the compliance end of tax and the strategic planning that's necessary for very high net worth individuals. And then I turned my attention to being in-house counsel for startups, did that for a couple of years, and then found my way back into the law, realizing that I wanted to marry my professional and my personal experiences by creating a law firm that's focused on estate planning, but in a more holistic way. Prior to starting the firm, I felt that everything was driven by tax, and that was really my background as well. But in my personal life, I suffered a devastating loss, and through that and through other experiences with clients, I learned that it's really important to have a plan that's not just about the taxes. It's about more. It's about creating a plan for your loved ones to be able to start over and move forward without you.
Yeah, that's tough to think about. Do you mind sharing more of your personal story? Like what happened?
Well, my personal story is actually in my first book called The Widow's Guide, which was published about 4 years ago. And my husband basically went to walk the dog in the morning and never came back. He was shot and killed by a hunter hunting on a Sunday on private property. And that was that.
Wow.
And I was 28 and he was 33. So life is very unexpected, and so is death. Right? One of the things that people always ask is, well, when is the right time to plan? And I like to say, well, you know what? I really ideally would love 2 months right before you know you're going to die. And then we're really going to have plenty of time to really hash out all the details, figure out everything, organize everything in a very neat way. But life is not like that. Most people don't know when their number is up. Look at COVID, right? I mean, COVID was happening kind of far away in China, and all of a sudden it was here. And look at how many thousands of people died very suddenly who would otherwise probably be alive. Look at Surfside Tower in the middle of the night, it just collapsed. Things happen every single day. So I think it's really important for people to just recognize that our lives are terminal. That's who we are. We as human beings are just terminal. And think about, what wishes you have for the people that you love that surround you to make their lives easier after you're gone.
I wish we had you on talking about the first book. So I do want to talk about this first book before we go to your new book, because I find people are not prepared for being a widow or widower except my wife. Our first date, do you know where it was?
Where?
Princeton Cemetery.
Was it Halloween?
No. I knew this was the woman I wanted to marry from the first day I met her. And I wanted to prepare, I wanted our love to sort of be this eternally focused thing where I'd be preparing her for my demise and me for her ultimate demise. It sounds depressing, but it was really a beautiful love story. So we went to Jonathan Edwards' gravesite. I don't know if you know who Jonathan Edwards was. Yale has a whole school called the Jonathan Edwards School, and he was one of the first presidents of Princeton, and he always talked about his wife very fondly, and he wrote amazing scholar, basically one of the greatest American people know him for the sermon Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. You probably read in like middle school or ninth grade, but he was a botanist, studied spiders, studied all kinds of things, and was in a lot of ways a lot of the intellectual underpinnings of the Great Awakening and then the founding of this country. So remarkable man. And so I don't know what led me to have this kind of sense of our own finitude, but I feel that a lot of people don't want to talk about death. That's probably the number one reason people don't do this thing. In your widow's guide, which I have it right here, your legal and financial guide to surviving the first year, I find that a lot of spouses are so rocked by the event that they don't do the things financially that they need to do. And then you'll often hear this advice like, oh, give it time, like come back to everything in a year. And then all of these other financial things like have to be done. So what are your top 3 tips for somebody just undergoing a loss and they don't know what to do with their money or whatever?
Well, buy my book. And I laugh when I say that, but I do mean it because I feel like there have been so many people who I've given more books than I probably sold. And I really believe that the book is a way to kind of help navigate this experience. And in my years of in my years of professional experience and in my personal experience, there is a pattern to kind of this experience, right? The first year is really the worst. It's very cutting and very painful and very dark because grief surfaces in so many small and significant ways that it is debilitating for many people, for many women. And then kind of there's this second year where you're kind of picking up the pieces and starting to kind of breathe again a little bit. You're still not fine. And the third year is kind of redefining who you are as a person that's single. And in this first year, what's really, as you mentioned, Josh, the desire is just to hide under a bed and cry and, just not move forward. But you have to move forward because there are significant decisions that need to be made and things need to be understood, especially if you were not the financial person in the family. And I think that, the first thing is just to understand that, even the smallest step is a step forward, right? And so I always talk to widows and I say, look, this is a journey. This is going to be a process that's going to take a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And what we need to do is break this down into the smallest possible steps and recruit other people that can help you get through these steps and tee things up so that you're making decisions kind of one piece at a time so that you're not overwhelmed by making these magnificent decisions kind of all at once. And so I would say baby steps, right? Even if it means like one day, like all you do for the first month is you just gather the paper, the mail that comes in, right? Or that kind of thing. And then maybe month 2 is you start opening it up and you start kind of contacting people. So just making things into bite-sized pieces so that you can move forward. And in my first book, I actually, in each step, it's kind of broken down into chronological steps in terms of when things really need to happen from a legal and tax perspective. I have journal pages, and those journal pages are really critical because most women who are experiencing this trauma feel like they are stuck, like their feet are completely cemented in cement, that they are not moving forward, but in fact, they are moving forward. And the journal pages are really important because you can look back and say, oh my gosh, I actually have done stuff. Like you just write down, what you've done, or look at the task lists that are also in the back of the book that you can see that you've made incredible progress. I think the second most important thing is to,
we'll hold that as a cliffhanger. We'll talk about the second and third most important pieces of advice for a widow or widower in the Widow's Guide. And folks, if you've just underwent this loss, I'll buy a copy for you if you call us and plan your no obligation 45-minute strategy session with the Financial Quarterback team. Give us a call, 888-988-JOSH. Or you can go to EckertByrne.com and buy the book, or buy it on Amazon or wherever books are sold. The book is called A Widow's Guide, Your Legal and Financial Guide. Then we're going to get into Anna's next book, but I really, I wish I had your book, A Widow's Guide, when I started, because it's funny. Everything you're saying resonates. I've been doing this for many years, and it took me years to figure out okay, what do you do with this person? There's a psychological component. There's the baby steps. There's some people who handle things differently. And then there are certain deadlines looming that you got to do. And the normal advice of, you just wait till, give it a year. You may not have a year for certain documents to be filed. Or you may be so under grief that because you haven't delegated certain tasks, that then you wake up 2 years later and you realize, you didn't make the IRA a spousal IRA, so you have 5 years to spend it, and all these other weird rules that people don't understand when they have a loss. So folks, give us a call, 888-988-JOSH, 888-988-5674. Wow, this is a great find. A Widow's Guide, Your Legal and Financial Guide to Surviving the First Year. 888-988-JOSH for the free review. Or you can go to Amazon and buy the book by Anna Byrne, Byrne. When we return, we'll reveal Anna's second and third tips if you're undergoing a loss. And I'll talk about some of my experiences as well. When we return, this is Josh Jelinski, the Financial Quarterback. Don't touch that dial. So Anna, what are the second and third most important tips for young or old widows or widowers that you learned from your experience?
So I would say pulling all the pieces together is really an important next step. So it's kind of a combination of collecting data, right? Collecting the statements, collecting tax returns. It's finding all the papers. It's finding the will. It's finding the trust. It's finding life insurance policies. It's finding out who your life insurance person is. It's finding out who your financial advisor is. It's finding out who your attorney is. It's just pulling all the pieces together, just in terms of finding the tangible stuff. Whether it's email, whether it's statements that you found, getting the tax returns from your accountant, and just getting all of those pieces together, right? That seems like such an insignificant thing, but it's such an important thing, because what I find happens is people make decisions in a vacuum. They find this one thing and they're like, okay, now I need to make a decision about this. In this process of estate administration, you really have to understand the whole landscape before you could make a decision about any one thing. So pulling the pieces together and taking an inventory is a really important piece before you decide anything. It's a critical step that I sometimes find people in a rush to feel like they're moving forward. They start deciding all of these pieces, which may result in things that the outcomes that they didn't want or anticipate, because everything is tied together, whether it's a probate, whether it's a trust administration, whether it's updating tax basis information in accounts, or, deciding that they're going to get a life insurance payout versus perhaps doing a disclaimer for one reason or another. I don't want people making decisions before they have a sense of what the landscape looks like.
No, that's fantastic. So we're with Anna Byrne, author of A Widow's Guide, which is your legal and financial guide to surviving the first year. And we're going to reveal her next book. But man, this is just hits home, years of experience that I'm going to be giving your book away to all my, it's sad. It's a sad reality of this life that, and a reality of the job that sometimes you're really there for people who need help, and having a book to give away is such a good idea. So people can just process. Some of it is just processing feelings or baby steps. And typically it's always now maybe it was different in your case because this is what you do for a living, but usually it's the least prepared spouse is the one that inherits the money. I don't know why that is, but from my sense, it's like they come to me and a widower comes to me and they're like just a wreck and they don't know where to start. And you're right, baby steps, great tip. Getting your POS, your pile of stuff, in order, that would be the best tip. I think that's the best tip if you're just starting out financial planning, if you're newly married, if you're going through transitions in life. Getting an inventory of, okay, you have this account here, this account here. It could be as simple. We use a modeling tool where you can see your whole financial life on one sheet of paper. You don't have to be a rocket scientist, but you should know kind of where things are. That's a great tip. And
yeah,
you're never really prepared for the loss, but if you have sort of an inventory of what you have, and we help people, we've had spouses who, there's one gentleman I came with, he was like 55 and he was obsessed with his death and preparing his wife for his demise. And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. He ended up dying tragically, very young. I want to say like 56. I want to say like a couple years after I met him. And everything was prepared. We had put everything in a nice binder for his wife, and she did not know what was going on. But it was amazing because he documented everything, put it together. It was like almost he channeled his own energy, and she would see, oh yeah, that makes sense. And even though she sort of delegated the financial to him, she's doing quite well years after. And having him love her so much that he prepared was really, a beautiful act of love. And you see that occasionally, spouses who do a good job preparing, it is so much better on the spouse who remains. But
yeah, I mean, this is my big thing, Josh, that, estate planning is not about death. It is about love. It is absolutely about love. It's about love for your spouse, because you know what? That grief will be there. Are you going to allow that person to grieve? Are you going to allow your spouse to grieve? Or are you going to force them to figure out all the pieces and grieve while they're doing it? How are you going to get your kids ready for when you're gone? How are you going to avoid issues and, stress for them? Like, it's the ultimate gift of love. And this is what I've been passionate about since I started the firm, is that people need to get this death business out of their head, because it seems to be really affecting, like it freaks people out. It's really not a good message. estate planning is really about love, about the love that you have for your family. It's about the love that you have for your spouse. It's about the love that you have for the things that for the people and the charities that you care about.
Yeah, for the people you love and the causes you love. And you could use my story, my first date, we went to a cemetery. But I've always seen the link between preparing for death, not to be a depressing thing, but to be a liberating thing. Like if you know you have these things put together, you can allow your spouse to grieve. And
absolutely,
it's such
absolutely.
a powerful.
A week before my husband died, he loved Halloween, and we went on a cemetery walk, and it was a beautiful cemetery in the town of Hingham. And he said to me, "But this is how I want my funeral to be." And he explained in elaborate detail of what he wanted and what he wouldn't want. And then a week later, he was gone, and I was planning his funeral.
Wow. Yeah, I'm heartbroken.
And that was a gift
for you.
I mean, that was a gift.
Yeah. Yeah,
because I knew without what I needed to do.
How does our culture get away from death as something we don't want to think about, to death, thinking about your demise as an act of love? How do we, it's really culturally, back in the day, right? Father knows best. What did he do for a living? Wasn't he like a life insurance salesman or something?
I don't know.
Somebody told me, I don't know if this is true or not, but somebody said, well, okay, back in the day, 50 years ago, the life insurance salesman was sort of like a respectable man in the community. Now life insurance is like, gross. I don't want to touch it. Although it's interesting, now there's a company called Lemonade that's sort of making life insurance hot again. Selling life insurance on Instagram and stuff. But
yeah, I don't know. I don't think that, I think that life insurance absolutely has a place for especially young families, but all families where there's a need. Insurance is an excellent tool. I don't think that people should just, throw life insurance out the window. I think there's an absolute need for it. And I think it's just maybe education needs to be elevated, to kind of bring it up to a level from being kind of like this super salesy thing that people do. And maybe, scaring people about death is also an issue, I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking even as I'm taking care of our 6 kids, we have 7 kids, and 6 I have to take care of because my other one's in the intensive care unit and he's recovering. Thank God.
Oh
my
goodness.
wife is with
so
him.
Sorry.
And I'm basically watching 6 kids all day.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm really not equipped. My wife is equipped. I'm not equipped to take care of 6 kids alone. Thank God for my 2 older daughters who are 12 and 11. They help me a little bit, except they don't want to change little boys' diapers. So they'll be like, "Hey, Dad, the diaper." I'm like in between meetings. That's a nice thing about doing meetings from home. But I go, man, what would it cost me to replace my wife? For some reason, my mind went there. I'm so glad I have life insurance on her because she's worth millions as a homemaker. Just in we don't have a nanny. We don't have any of these things, but she does everything. She's their teacher. She homeschools them. She cooks. She educates. She's a counselor. She's a psychologist. The families. She does everything. We really are not nothing without her. So it's funny. But you don't think that. It's not ingrained. We do have to do a better job of preparing our loved ones for one's demise. So, first tip, baby steps. Second tip, get your stuff together, your pile of stuff, maybe in a nice binder. We could help you organize that. Third, what's your third tip for people before we go to the Inheritor's Guide?
You need a team. You need a team. You need a good attorney who's going to handle all the legal heavy lifting, and you're going to need an accountant who can do the tax returns, and you're going to need an advisor a financial advisor who's going to need to figure out how much money you have, how much you need to live, whether you have enough, what that's going to look like for you. Because I think one of the biggest issues that I see, regardless of how much money is left to the spouse, there's always a fear. There's a fear that there's not going to be enough. There's a fear that you're going to have to sell the house. There's all this fear. I mean, I've had women that I've worked with who've had, $20-30 million, and for some reason they feel like they're going to run out of money. So having someone really create a net worth statement and then a cash flow analysis for you, and someone to do the tax return and someone to deal with the legal stuff is really the critical step so that things get done in a timely way. So that's really the third step, is really build a team of people that are going to help you, and that will make things move forward and ultimately help you put this piece of your life behind you and start your year of, kind of feeling better, feeling stronger, and becoming now a new person because of this experience.
Yeah, and I would say also get that team before someone dies, because too many people, because I've had people on teams like you met with, and this is why your book's so great. You're dealing with grief for years, but that first year is so intense that you don't want to be interviewing financial people and grieving. You want to be interviewing them like with your spouse, even if your spouse does all the money management decisions, even if they're self-managing everything on their own, then you're probably a delegator. So your spouse may have not been, but maybe you are. So it's very crucial you get that team, I think, before someone passes. And I think there's no better time than now. So great tips, man. I'm going to get your book, A Widow's Guide by Eckert Byrne, and then we're going to talk about the next book, which is The Inheritor's Guide. So if the first book was this good, I mean, I know we're talking about The Inheritor's Guide, but it's like, wow, I didn't even know your book existed. And
actually, a lot of advisors buy it for their clients.
Yeah.
And I have an advisor that I work with closely who's in the New York, New Jersey area, and I think he's my number one purchaser of the Widow's Guide. He claims that I've landed him some pretty enormous clients because of my book.
Yeah, well, it just resonates. Everything you say is like what I experience, and it's such a difficult thing. So thank you for sharing your story, and I'm sorry for your loss. That's horrible. So give us a call, folks, 888-988-JOSH to get the Widow's Guide. And then next we're going to talk about Inheritors. Wait, what is the Inheritor's Guide, is it? Yeah.
Yes.
So A Widow's Guide and now the Inheritor's Guide. And if you call us at 888-988-JOSH, and you want the 45-minute no obligation review, we will buy a copy of Anna's book at no charge. 888-988-JOSH. We'll be back next talking about how do you impart and steward your legacy, not only the financial, the tangible, but also the intangible. When we return, this is Josh Jelinski, the financial quarterback. Don't touch that dial.
The preceding program was sponsored by the Jelinski Advisory Group.
Any awards, rankings, or recognition by unaffiliated third parties or publications, including 5-Star Wealth Manager, Advisory of the Year finalist by Senior Market Advisor, and top of the $1 Million Roundtable, are in no way indicative of the advisor's future performance or any individual client's investment success. No award, ranking, or recognition should be construed as a current or past endorsement of Josh Jelinski or Wealth Quarterback LLC. Information regarding specific awards, rankings, or recognitions is available on the Wealth Wealth Quarterback website at www.jelinsky.org. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. Investment strategies such as asset allocation, diversification, or rebalancing do not assure or guarantee better performance and cannot eliminate the risk of investment losses. There are no guarantees that a portfolio employing these or any other strategy will outperform a portfolio that does not engage in such strategies. This broadcast should not be construed by any client or prospective client as a solicitation to effect or attempt to effect transactions in securities or the rendering of personalized investment advice. Due to various factors, including changing market conditions, the information discussed in this broadcast may no longer be reflective of current positions or recommendations. While information presented is believed to be factual and up to date, Josh Jelinsky and Wealth Quarterback do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. The tax and estate planning information discussed is general in nature, is provided for informational purposes only, and should not be construed as legal or tax advice. Listeners should consult an attorney or tax professional regarding their specific legal or tax situation. Advisory services offered through Wealth Quarterback LLC.